Yeah, you're.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So, but we were live before?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, but no one could hear.
okay, so we're back.
We're back
And then
to
we're-
that.
January 22nd, Center Natural Resources and Energies. Okay,
Okay,
please continue. Thank you.
yes, for the record again, I'm Karina Daly, restoration ecologist with Vermont Natural Resources Council. And I'm going to tell you more about river corridors and then pass it over to Laura Noakes to talk a little bit more about the Flood Safety Act. So the first slide I show this the river channel moving across the floodplain, and then the right-hand picture is that delineated river corridor that the Vermont Rivers Program has defined as the area that is protected for the river to move, so giving it the space it needs to move. I'm going to try to advance my slide. There we go. So this distance across the valley is called the meander belt. So, and it's the room the river needs to move across that valley. And there's a center line to that meander belt. And as rivers evolve over time, they're constantly trying to reach their least erosive force. So if we have a history of dredging rivers over time, and we watch a river that was dredged in 1924, and then 10 years later and then dredging has stopped, we let the river return, we give it the space to move over time, it's gonna ultimately follow a more sinuous path. And it's that meander pattern and meander belt that defines the width of a river corridor, and that's the space a river needs to move.
You used the word there that I'm not familiar.
Yes.
Sinuous?
Sinuous or sinuosity.
What does that mean?
That's.
Oh,
yeah.
that's sign language.
Yes,
Okay, got
Yes.
it, okay.
exactly. Good question.
Sure.
And as we think about river corridors and that space, giving space the rivers need to move, I want to think about rivers in all their capacity. So it's rivers, headwater streams to Lake Champlain or to the Hudson, wherever we are, Connecticut River, wherever we are in the state. So it's a watershed scale approach to thinking about where our water travels on the landscape and thinking about connecting those systems, because it's that ability of an intact freshwater system that builds resilience. And in the face of climate change, we've found that our natural infrastructure is our best line of defense. So we can create flood resilient communities by reconnecting our rivers and giving them the space they need to slow down floodwater and attenuate stormwater within those wetlands, filter it both for clean water, for public safety, and reduced economic burden. A fundamental concept of watershed ecology is understanding this concept that rivers are not one-dimensional. They exist in 4 dimensions. And when we impact one of those dimensions, we disconnect the function of a river. So rivers have a lateral dimension, and that's that ability to access their floodplain. So we need to give them that space, that river corridor, so that during flood events, they can jump out onto that floodplain and slow down. That's the lateral dimension. The longitudinal dimension of a river is a river's ability to move downstream. Rivers they move water, they move sediment, they move nutrients. Aquatic organisms move up and down that system. So when we block that system with something like a dam or an undersized culvert, we're blocking the longitudinal connectivity of a river. And when we block that, we also are blocking its lateral connectivity, because behind the river we have now this pond, and the pond is taking up space where a floodplain historically would be. So that river can't get out onto its floodplain. The vertical dimension, the 3rd dimension, is the connection of surface water to groundwater. So we have these surface water river systems, if you're ever walking along a river, maybe fly fishing or just waiting, and you suddenly feel a really cold patch of water, that's the groundwater spring seed coming into the river. Those are really important for the health of our rivers, to keep our rivers cold. Vermont's known for their cold rivers, for our brook trout streams. So we want to connect that vertical dimension to our rivers. And again, when we have a dam or some type of infrastructure that's blocking a river, we're blocking that vertical connection so that groundwater is just ponding behind the dam and warming up the water. And then lastly, the fourth dimension is that rivers change over time. I showed you those pictures before of the different evolutions of the river, the river's sinuosity over time. And we need to accept that and be prepared for that rivers move over time. And these, I'll just say that all of this nature-based solutions to climate change are recognized in the Vermont plans. Our climate action plan recommends promoting healthy connected river corridors, floodplains, and wetlands, and protecting the adaptive capacity of natural resources. It recommends sustaining, restoring, and enhancing the health and function of Vermont's lands and waters. It recommends shaping land use and development that supports carbon sequestration and storage. And it recommends increasing flood resilience in the natural land and built environment. These come up again in the state hazard mitigation plan, the Lake Champlain TMDL, and the governor's flood resilience implementation plan. So again, just a more refresher, but a river corridor is that area where the land adjacent to a river that's required to accommodate the river's movement. And it's delineating that area that's necessary to protect infrastructure. So keeping infrastructure out of those areas and allowing them for the room it needs to move. And then also thinking about the riparian area that vegetates that area. The first picture I showed you was of a farm field. So all of the active farmland that's along our rivers, it's the best soil, it's really great soil. But way back in history, it was forest. And it is that forest that the river needs or to maintain cool water, shade, habitat, nutrients, and stabilize the riverbanks. So where we can, we need to also protect the riparian functions of the river corridor and support habitat. Again, those riparian areas control sediment and nutrient filtration. They provide large wood recruitment that then feeds the river, provides habitat for aquatic organisms and terrestrial organisms, and stabilizes banks. Another concept that I wanted to share with you is this river continuum concept. And I've kind of already gone over it, so I'll jump over it, but it's thinking about that longitudinal connectivity, that dimension of a river, and when you block that with a dam, what happens? And I think this is a great visual that just shows how the temperature behind them will warm up. The ecosystem changes. So when you have a pond in a river, when you turn a river into a pond, you have different species. You have sunfish and bass, warm water fish species versus brook trout, cold water fish species that Vermont is known for. You have sediment that can't move down a river, so it builds up behind that dam. And as that sediment builds up, it actually raises the elevation of the river because unless someone's actively dredging behind that dam, then the sediment has no place to go, and ultimately the river's raised. You block the connection to the floodplain itself. You have the water slows down, it warms up, you have a lower dissolved oxygen, so you have less bubbles and oxygen in the water, and less velocity. So all of those things contribute to clean water health or change the health of the river and also change its function. So that's something called the river continuum concept, and just understanding that rivers move They're free flowing, and that process of conveyance and transport of water, sediment, nutrients, and organisms
Fallout, right?
I mean,